Welcome to the BII's brand new podcast, Not Just a Pub. With 10,000 members and growing, the BII is the leading membership organisation for licensed trade professionals, keeping pubs thriving at the heart of every community in the UK for over 40 years. We'll be speaking to a wide variety of industry professionals from across our creative and vibrant sector, sharing their stories and successes. You can find more information and listen to all episodes on the BII website now, www.bii.org.
Welcome to episode 2 of the Not Just a Pub podcast. My name's Peter. I'm on the marketing team at the BII, and I'm joined today by Tom Brady, co-founder of GigRealm's. Tom, thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, no, thanks for the invite. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, it should be a good chat today. Exciting topics ahead. So speaking of which, the topic of today's discussion will be, what does live entertainment do for hospitality? So quite a broad topic, and we'll kind of delve in just a moment. But before we do that, can we just get a little bit about yourself and about what it is that GigRealm does?
Yeah, no, of course. Yes, as you mentioned there, I'm Tom Brady. I'm one of the co-founders at GigRealm. And really, GigRealm is an online platform that supports the hospitality sector. So pubs and bars and other forms of venues to be able to just put on exciting live entertainment. So live music, for instance. And that's what we do. So everything's housed online through the system, simplifying how live entertainment is done.
Amazing. It's almost as if you'd rehearsed that. That was very succinct.
just a couple of times, mate, in the mirror.
Yeah, I'm sure. Awesome. So yeah, sounds great. Now, if pubs are looking to host live music at their venues, could we just get, what would be some of the key considerations that you should say they should be looking at?
Yeah, well, I think right now it's probably worth sort of just looking at the landscape, isn't it? And hospitality has been really hit hard over the last couple of years, and we know that. And I think probably people listening to podcasts like this are probably fed up of hearing about COVID and stuff. So that's the only time I'm going to mention it, and I'm going to move on, and I'm not going to mention that again. But I do think that right now, in the current landscape, there is the cost of living crisis. Mm-hmm. And we know that there are so many people out there, and I'm kind of talking about customers now, that are real hard up at the moment, you know, in terms of having the disposable income that they once had is not there anymore. And so with the little bits of budget and money that they do have, I think that operators, whether you're large and small or independent pubs, whoever you are across the landscape, are looking at how do we still draw those customers in? How do we have an exciting offering for those customers and potentially diversify what we do? That's ultimately what it boils down to. And I think that live entertainment essentially really helps with that conversation. So when it comes to the cost of living crisis, there are still a number of people out there that are looking for exciting, low cost forms of entertainment because they may not have the money anymore or currently to go to Glastonbury. You know, we just saw, I read the other day, I think it was yesterday, it was in the BBC, the Glastonbury tickets are now going up to 350 quid. You've got all sorts of other forms of entertainment that are ticketed that cost a lot of money. And we know that when you go to those events, it's also a lot to drink at those events. So I think pubs and bars specifically can look at cost of living as a way to engage with local communities, to bring people in what is on a real low cost and decent night out, whether that's with friends or family, that's not going to break the bank. And I think also it's worth remembering that live music or live entertainment is something that can't be replicated at home, especially live music. So, you know, we can watch live sports at home. We can do various other things at home, whether that's even eating and drinking. But certainly I think live music's a great way to entice people out as well.
Yeah, and a couple of really interesting points there. You know, comparing it to the price of a festival or a similar event like that, you know, you're paying not only for the tickets, but there's a lot that goes around that. You know, if you're there for a couple of nights, you've got transport, you've got places to stay, you've got, you know, sustenance for the time that you're there. Like you said, there is a lot to drink as well. Whereas if you're down at your local with some amazing live music playing. You can go just for the evening with a bunch of friends, have a great night, spend a lot less, and end up in your own bed at the end of that night, nice and comfy, right?
Yeah.
Which maybe that's me getting old a little bit, but I think there is something to be said for that, to have the entertainment brought to your doorstep and that convenience factor, as well as, like you said, really important in current times, keeping costs down. Now, I understand that there's multiple genres of music. Of course, not every type of band or type of music is going to be appropriate for every type of pub. Do you have any tips, I guess, for pubs and kind of finding the right match for the type of music that they should host there?
Yeah, it's a really interesting one, actually, because obviously pubs themselves, and certainly when you look at hospitality in a wider sense, is very diverse. And you'll have typical boozers and the old-fashioned, good old pub that's there, and then you've got more up-and-coming, modernized bars that are really exciting, and there's a real sort of breadth of different venues. And I think that with live music, my sort of tips really would be that, also don't be afraid to be a little bit stereotypical with it. If you do run that typical, grassroots pub that's on the corner of most high streets and local communities, I think that stereotypically you think, we put a band on. That'd be the normal go-to thing to do. And they work really well. Bands are still a fantastic way of bringing people through the doors. And I think that those pubs that are, again, the more traditional pubs, do really, really well with bands. I think when you kind of then get to bars, for instance, just as a sort of comparison, a lot of bars now will be much more focused on food-led sort of sales, as opposed to just purely being wet-led. And of course, pubs do that as well. Of course they do. But I think with bars where they are looking at maybe more of their food offering, or a premium offering, I think they also benefit from maybe having a solo artist in the corner, or somebody doing more acoustic, especially if you are serving more food and you want the right sort of atmosphere and ambience there. You don't want anything that's going to be too full on or too noisy as people are still finishing their dinner, getting into sort of like the later evening. So I think that it really depends on, are you wet led? Are you food led? What sort of obviously venue you have. And I think that the people who run those venues know that, ultimately, they know their venues inside and out. And I think that you can give a bit of trial and error. And that's a really exciting part. And the benefit, I guess, of live music is that, and certainly through, technology like GigRealm, but just in general booking music, you can give a band a go, and you can maybe throw 100 quid at it and go, do you know what, let's pick that local band that's in the local community, that doesn't live too far away, that doesn't have to travel miles, that can turn up, do a set, do an hour and a half or something like that on an evening, and see whether it works. Because certainly my other tip would be looking at local musicians, because certainly if you book local musicians, they have a local following. And when they have a local following, that's kind of like guaranteed footfall that you're bringing in, because they'll want their fans to come along. They'll be promoting it themselves on their own social pages and elsewhere. So for the sake of that 100 quid to give it a go, if you've never done music before and you're trying something different, and you think, do you know what, I never really do a full band. I normally just do a bit of an acoustic set, or I just get a singer in on their own. It's worthwhile giving it a go and book someone local. Certainly putting back into the local music community, I think there's a lot of advantages there, and building up that network of those musicians in that local community that will ultimately help your business out. And they will bring those local fans. So I think there's a couple of sort of tips there in terms of just giving it a go, to be honest.
Those are some fantastic tips, though, actually, a few really good ones there. And I mean, the pubs are all about their communities there. And so really, it's a win-win for both, local musicians and the pubs themselves. Like you said, some real kind of golden nuggets there. Another really interesting thing I thought you said kind of right at the start of that was kind of the opposite to what a lot of people are saying, which is, think outside the box, do things different. You said, don't be afraid to kind of fit into your own stereotypes, really, because at the end of the day, it is probably what a lot of the people going there will be expecting. I just thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I'm all for diversification, and I think that's really, really important. I think the sector can afford to become stagnant, right? They're looking for new ways of how they enhance their offering, enhance the customer experience, how they engage with customers and connect with them, to really provide them with the sort of the idea and the thought of leaving their homes. How do you get them out and spending that little bit of money that they have because of things like the cost of living crisis. So diversification is absolutely paramount. But I do think that when it comes to live music, if let's take a pub for instance that's never done it, and they diversify by putting on music for the first time, I think you can still then be a little bit more traditional in the way that then you approach, well, what sort of band do I put on? So again, or musician, I should say. And it might be that you want to put a band on because you kind of go, well, yeah, stereotypically as a pub, that's what pubs do. And you also mentioned a really interesting point, I think, which is that's maybe what customers are expecting. So kind of it's that balancing act, isn't it, of what do you want to provide them that they anticipate versus then surprising them when they turn up. And I think that, I think live music is great at doing that. It gives that surprise element of something really exciting, because you kind of go, oh yeah, I'm going to see a band, but until you see them, until you're actually in there, you don't quite necessarily know what you're going to be letting yourself in for, maybe. But I think the diversification mixed with a little bit of understanding your venue, and if you go more the traditional route in terms of how you do it by putting on that band, I think there's nothing wrong with that, and you'll quickly learn whether it's the right thing.
And I think you kind of summed it up there as well, just understanding, like most licensees will, understanding their pub and their community and the people that go to the pub, what they're looking for, really is going to be key in finding the right matches to you. And again, like you said, don't be afraid to give a musician a go. It's not going to be, you're not signing contracts that are going to, tie you in for years. It's a one-off. If it works, then you've found something great. And if not, then no harm done, right?
Yeah, exactly that. And I think also, the beauty of companies like ours is that it's not just bands or a solo artist that you're able to get hold of as well. I think there will be a lot of pubs and bars out there, as well as other venues, that are thinking, why not a DJ? Why not a drag queen that sings? There are so many different types of acts that you can tap into that really fit with your offering. And there's a fantastic company that we're partnering with that do quizzes, online quizzes. And, quizzes have become a massive thing because of COVID and lockdown. And actually, I said I was promised that I wasn't going to say that, but I've done it. I've done it. But that became a big thing, and they're doing amazing things in the sector. And we're looking to partner with them because, ultimately we can help them provide hosts and drag queens that might then sing whilst also then hosting the quiz. And so I think that, it's really looking at live entertainment in general, and figuring out what could work, because I think that most pubs have given music a go. I think they've given quizzes a go. They've given quite a few things a go, but I think that's the value of technology now. I think that's what's really changed the landscape. Companies like GigRealm and others that are coming in and really being able to simplify it. And I think that's the big thing, kind of like the elephant in the room that people don't talk about, is I think most pubs will go, we'd love to do live music. We really would. And actually, the cost is not so much of a big thing because it's all dependent on our budget. So if you've only got 100 quid, you've only got 100 quid. So all of that can be worked through quite quickly. But really, it's, how do I find those musicians in the first place, or those acts? But then how do I take all the boring admin out of it? Like you mentioned their contracts, how do we make sure that there's not anything too crazy in terms of contracts, but something that protects us, that makes sure it's professional and above board and gives us reassurance, whilst also making sure the musicians are paid quickly, and that they're not pestering me at the bar the next day or calling us up or emailing us. So I think there's a tech play as well here that will really support the venues.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, it's about making it accessible, right? Making it accessible for everyone. A lot of people have the intention, like you said, to do it, but it can be just that little bit more frictionless, I should say. Sometimes that's just all people need. We're going to shift gears a little bit here and talk numbers. So sorry to put you on the spot if I am here.
That's all right. Go for it.
I hope you got your notes up. But could we just get some statistics, just some general statistics to give people an idea of the kind of, I guess, demand for from customers for live music at their venues, and how many people or how many venues roughly in the country are currently hosting live music, if you have those kinds of figures?
Yeah, I mean, I've got most of those figures for sure. So yeah, I've done my homework
Fantastic. Good to
and
know.
prepared a little bit. I mean, I'll kind of start like in reverse really with that one,
Mhm.
which is you finished there on how many venues basically put on live music,
Mhm.
and that's a real difficult one
Mm.
because there are traditional live music venues that will be they're the sort of venues that see themselves as a music venue rather than a pub or bar, if that
Right.
makes sense. You know, they're kind of more in the music industry rather
Mhm.
than see themselves being in the hospitality industry or sector. So it's a real challenge, but I guess really ultimately every venue can do it, right?
Mhm.
And there's probably you know, in some ways you could argue there's a need for maybe most of those venues to do it, whether that's diversifying, whether that's just enhancing customer experience and all that sort of good stuff. But in terms of the actual stats, I mean, what's interesting is that GigRealm, we commissioned some research back in July or August. It's just about wrapping up now, actually. And we went out to a variety of different consumers looking at customer demand for live music, but also speaking with operators as well, so small and large, and some independents, which VII supported us with. So very grateful to you guys for that. And you know, within that research, so you kind of getting some of this research before others here. But
Mhm.
in terms of that research, what was really, really powerful was that 76% of consumers have specifically gone to a pub to watch live music. So live music was the big sort of driving factor for them to make a decision to go to a pub.
Mhm.
And I think, you know, that just goes to show how much consumer demand is out there. And that's certainly heightened by pandemic, obviously, etc. The way that people have not got as much money, maybe they're looking for more of those free events. But I think also people have realized that there is much more of this community spirit
Mhm.
again. And you mentioned as well, we briefly touched on it, how pubs always see themselves as being part of the local communities.
Yep.
And they are the beating heart of communities, let's be honest. And one of the sort of last real bastions of the high street. And so I think that consumers are seeing that. They're seeing that their high street has changed.
Mhm.
And so more of them are wanting to kind of put back into the high street, go to their local pubs and not lose those pubs. And
Mhm.
so if that means that they get to access live music, that's another great thing for them to, another reason really for
Mhm.
them to go back into those venues. So 76%. And then very quickly, also some interesting stats that we also saw is that when we talk about cost of living, 68% agreed that actually live music was the perfect thing, really, the perfect experience that would entice them out even on a low budget. So, you know, nearly 70% of people on a low budget are saying, yeah, do you know what? I'd still go to the local pub
Mhm.
if live music was on, because again, it's about that low cost solution and
Mhm.
offering, I should say, that's going to entice them in versus, and we touched on it, festivals, concerts, you know, high ticketed events that are
Mhm.
out there. And then a really interesting one, this might actually sort of like feed us into a nice other topic around
Mhm.
sports, but 85% agree that actually putting on and mixing live music with live sports, so let's say putting it on after a match or a game, would entice them to stay longer in that pub. And most of those people are the next generation. They're the millennials and the Gen Zs that are saying that. So I think that as operators, whether again small or large or independents, are looking at how to engage with the next generation of customers, especially Gen Z who don't drink as much alcohol.
Mhm.
There, a lot of them now focused on low alcohol products or
Mhm.
zero products. Then actually, you know, how do you get those sales up? How do you get them doing more and coming in more often? And I think again, if 85% are saying that it would mix really well with existing offerings like live sports, that's
Mhm.
quite powerful.
And you're absolutely right. That would make a fantastic segue. We'll move on to discussing discussing, I guess, well, sport, and we do have the upcoming World Cup. But before we do just get onto that, I just wanted to just touch on that point because it is bringing the younger generation, Gen Z, and the ones to come, into pubs is a topic of discussion or I guess concern for some people at the moment, that you know people younger people are not going out to pubs as much, they're not drinking as much. So how is it that we can entice them to come in? And I think through you know, again, generally speaking, younger people will not have as much of an expendable budget. I mean, that can go both ways. They have less to spend, but then again, they have less they need to spend, so it goes both ways. But generally speaking, for younger people with not as much expendable income, this is a fantastic way to kind of get them in the door. So going on, I mean, we're skipping a couple questions. We'll come back in just a moment, but I do want to talk about the upcoming World Cup. And do you have any advice or tips about how people can, I guess, pub owners can ultimately capitalize on live music and the World Cup?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think, sports and music go hand in hand. They're some of our biggest cultural sort of exports that the UK has. I think, people look at both sport and music in this country as two of the big things that we offer from a cultural perspective. And I think that when we talk about pubs and the fact that, so many pubs do, of course, put on live sports. So even when we look at the women's Euros that took place, how many pubs actually were putting that on, and that was really interesting to see, and obviously a real positive thing to see when we talk about women's football specifically. But I think that a lot of these places can put on music in and around sports. It's all entertainment at the end of the day. But the difference really with music, and I think where this sort of, my recommendation, my tips would come in, is that live music, again, is something that can't be replicated at home, unlike live sports. And of course, so many people will want to still go out to watch sports. But again, when we talk about cost of living, when we talk about diversifying your offering and engaging with different types of audiences, because it can't be put on at home, you're not going to hire a band and put them in your corner of your living room. Well, you may want to, but you're probably not going to do that. It is another reason to sort of go to the pub. And so I think matching them, marrying them up is just a great way to keep people in those pubs longer. So one example is that we did a case study with a fantastic Green King pub called the Broadwater. Amazing general manager called Diane over there, who uses GigRealm to put on obviously her live music. And she did put on obviously also the women's Euros and the final specifically. And she was just saying what an amazing atmosphere it created when at the end of the game, at the end of the match, when they'd won, that the band were already set up, ready to go and started playing Sweet Caroline.
Yeah.
And the atmosphere of that pub was just phenomenal. And actually, she's seen her take-ins double on a weekend now, by being able to put in some live music. So I think that, that's just a really great example of being able to kind of go, get a band in at the end of the game, ready to just, kick things off and keep that atmosphere where it is. And even if the team that you're there loses, or especially if it's the World Cup and England, touch wood, God forbid, end up losing again, and it kind of slumps off a little bit. I think that as Brits and stuff, we're not too bothered by that sometimes. I think we're just happy to keep drinking, get through it. And if there's a band on there that gets the atmosphere back up, that keeps people, engaged, and keeps the mood, happy, then I think it's a win-win for pubs. So I certainly think that, matching them up and putting on some music after a game is the way to go.
Yeah, and look, whether it's to celebrate or to commiserate, like I think having the live music there, like you said, timing it perfectly, having it just immediately after the game, bands ready to go. I think that's really powerful because I mean, like you said earlier, that was a really powerful statistic. I can't remember the exact numbers, 85, 86%?
85%, yeah.
85%, there we go, are would be willing to stay on afterwards. And I mean, I think I'm not surprised to hear that was it Dan's takings have doubled.
Diane over at Broadwater takings have doubled. Diane. Yeah, I know it's crazy, isn't it? And I think that especially with that, just on that example there, it's worth pointing out that she already did live music. But I think again, it's about simplifying how you do it, getting access to the right bands, good quality bands. And again, that's the kind of technology play, obviously, that can come in to support that, so that you're not just relying on word of mouth or having to take to Facebook and seeing whether you can find a band in the area, but you're not too sure whether they're, good enough for your pub and all of those sort of things. So certainly I think by her having that infrastructure and that support in place just transformed how she did live music, and then also gave her time really back, so that she could then think about and plan everything a little bit better to be able to say, let's get the actual band on after this match has taken place. And I think that planning and cutting down of admin was the real sort of saving grace. And another real interesting thing that she's doing as well is she's now kind of going into this whole Broadwater's Got Talent So again,
Okay.
powered by us, obviously, and through our
Yeah,
technology,
yeah.
putting on a whole monthly talent competition that I believe it may have already launched. So there's going to be over 64 different acts that are going to be
Wow.
performing, with customers then voting every month in the pub, with so many then winners, all leading through to a big thing right up to June next year. In terms of, kind of like a big prize or something for the winner. But I think that again, is the beauty of tech in terms of streamlining and planning.
Yeah.
But yeah, certainly engage with different audiences, I think, is the other sort of takeaway as well. By putting on live music with sport. There's a lot of stats out there as well that we saw around women and sports. For a long time, obviously, whether that's just a lack of representation on TV, i.e. women's football, or whether that's, women in general not being as engaged with football itself compared to men. There's a lot of information, a lot of stats that came out of our research that showed actually, again, by giving a much bigger offering, much more diverse offering, by putting live music in the mix as an example, that you were getting other audiences such as women, younger generations, etc.
Right, it's that kind of crossover of audiences, like you say. It's always going to be a good thing. And so outside of the World Cup, obviously we have Halloween coming up. We've got Christmas coming up. A lot of kind of seasonal events coming up faster than I'd like to admit. But is there any? I mean, again, it might be the same kind of thing. But do you have any tips or specific advice for seasonal events and leveraging live music around seasonal kind of events or times of year?
Yeah, I think it's kind of pretty much what I've said, really.
Yeah.
And so I won't bore people to tears, but I think it really is about giving it a go. And I think the market research sort of speaks for itself in terms of customer demand is there.
Yeah.
Cost of living's on the rise. So it's about being able to just give a cost-effective offerings and solutions to these problems. And I believe that customers, as they are saying, are going to be coming out to pubs more, and it will absolutely see that at Halloween and at Christmas and at New Year's Eve, of course. Yeah. Let's not forget that. So they will be out there anyway. And so I guess the question really is, well, do we need to do anything if we know that we're kind of somewhat guaranteed that footfall? But I wouldn't say that it's guaranteed. I think that, again, attitudes are shifting. It's how you engage with the younger audiences, and live music's been shown to really engage with them, because they might not be there to just purely drink. And they are looking for other things to do and enjoy when they're in those venues. Yeah. So that's certainly something that you can provide them at Halloween and Christmas, etc. But also, when we talk about Christmas, obviously, unlike Halloween, it's not just one night. It's a whole month of activity that's going on, whether that's office parties happening again, whether that's just people going out with friends and family, whatever it is. There's a lot more food, obviously, consumed at those meals, etc. So I think that it's also kind of going, we can do the, kind of like the Christmas dinners and things like that. But then what are we doing in the evenings across December? How are we then keeping people in longer for those later sit-ins that are coming in for the sort of like the dinners, the Christmas dinners? How do we then keep them there longer after they've eaten to have a few drinks and stay in the premises and not worry about, oh, where should we go now as part of the office night out? Why not just do most of the evening, if not all of it, within your pub, because you're giving them everything that they need. So I think that's important, is just to kind of give it a go, really. And ultimately you may want to also look at the different types of acts again and have that DJ come in later on in the evening to make it a bit more of that kind of club environment sort of feeling engaged, and get people up and get them dancing and all that sort of stuff. But then maybe you want to start off the evening with a band. Maybe you want to start off the evening with a solo artist who's singing as people are eating their dinners, and then sort of change the atmosphere and the mood. I think that's certainly something to consider.
That's a really great point, because I mean, I know a lot, at least from my own experience, a lot of the time when you go out, you say, okay, where do we go for dinner? Then you say, where do we go for early entertainment? And then you go out for the, for the late night kind of drinks. And it's usually, like you said, 2 or 3 different locations that you're going to get all of that. But why not make your pub the one-stop kind of place where you can get all of that and retain people longer? Because I mean, they absolutely have the ability to do so. It's just about, like you said, planning it and making it happen. That was really powerful for me anyways.
Yeah, and look, and who wants to give up that table that they've got at the first venue?
Yeah.
Nobody really wants to walk around, queue, pay to get in certain places,
Hmm.
and then find a table. And I think especially at Christmas, where you've got larger groups that are going out,
Mm.
I think most of them would be quite happy to kind of sit there, lock in that table, even if they're then getting up, moving around, knowing that it's still theirs, going to
Mm.
queuing at the bar, later on in the evening, getting up, dancing, whatever they're doing. And I think so many venues and premises that are around as well still have function rooms,
Mm.
still have other areas of their bars or pubs that they could be utilizing for these seasonal activities. So I also think, look at function rooms, look at those other areas of your venue that you could then host maybe a DJ later on in the evening, so that you still retain maybe a certain element of the pub or bar that is just catering for those that are maybe not looking so much for the big night out, but still quite happy to have, listen to the music in the background, be able to talk and sit down around a table. So I think it's really looking at how do you utilize those other areas of the venue as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's some amazing advice right there. Just to kind of round things off, if people are looking to, well, they're making arrangements to host live music in their pubs, have you got any advice on promoting those events and kind of letting people know that they are hosting these live music events and getting people in the door, getting people excited for it?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, the way that I always sort of tackle this one is again through
Mhm.
technology, because
Yeah.
I think that is ultimately how we're all engaging anyway. But social media is the first point of call.
Mhm.
It's so powerful, and whilst it might seem really obvious to some, there are still a number of pubs and bars that I've worked with over the years now that don't really have much of a presence on social media. And I understand all the reasons. And some of them go, but our customers don't really engage that much on there, or there's not too much that we can really promote on there. But I do think that even if you had a couple of hundred followers, from the local community and local area, it's a great way of just being able to tell them what's going on. And I don't think we can underestimate that or undervalue that enough. I think we should absolutely be utilizing social platforms to be able to get that message out there in terms of those live music events that you're doing, but then also relying on the musicians themselves. I mentioned earlier on about how they have these great like fan sort of bases and following. So whether that's local talent, by the way, or you might have booked somebody from a little bit further afield. Even those people that are touring and maybe come from further afield will still have great loyal fan bases that will actually turn around and go, yeah, I fancy a night out in Nottingham or in London or in Bristol or wherever it is. And they will travel, along with that musician to go to your venue, your pub, to see them play. So getting the musicians themselves to promote it on their socials and where they obviously promote it in general is really powerful, as well as doing it on your own social media. Because I would also say as well, with musicians, unlike maybe hospitality, hospitality will do the standard kind of Instagram, Facebook, but also musicians, it's all about TikTok. It's all about different forms of channels that they can really get that message out there quite quickly.
Mhm.
And that will help to drive a lot of footfall ultimately to your pub or bar. So I think that that's the big one, really. Obviously, you've got things like posters and putting those up. I think that they're still really important and really powerful to make sure that you've got that advertised outside the venue, not just inside the venue, because people won't necessarily come in and see that poster in the toilets, as which is what normally happens. But I think getting those boards outside and doing more of that, and being a little bit thinking outside the box a little bit in terms of putting the imagery, the artist imagery, whoever you've booked, just taking that off their socials, or again, if you use platforms like GigRealm, you have access to all of this, and taking that imagery down so that you can then print that out and display who you've got booked, rather than just saying we do live music. I think that just really helps. And again, might sound really obvious to some, but I think it would be a real help to others.
Yeah, no, I think that's some great advice. And like you said, the bands will have a lot of potential connections that a typical hospitality venue might not. And even going in beyond as well, like what you said about how the hospitality venues may not necessarily feel that it's valuable for them to engage in social media because they don't get a lot of engagement back themselves. From someone who deals with a lot of social media myself, a lot of the time, even if it doesn't look like people are engaging, they are still seeing what you're putting out. And sometimes that's all that it takes. We can see the kind of statistics on how many people have viewed our posts versus how many people actually engage with them. And if you look at those statistics, the number of people that actually engage is a very small percentage of the amount of people that have seen your post. So that's just something to bear in mind as well from that perspective. I don't know why I'm giving the advice. I'm the one interviewing you. But no, that was something I picked up.
No, absolutely agree with you. And I think also it's catering for the next sort of generation, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, it's looking at those younger audiences ultimately and saying, how do we engage with them? Because the older demographics may not go onto Instagram or utilize those platforms, or maybe TikTok or something like that as much. But I do think that we will see a shift, maybe where more hospitality brands are doing TikTok and the likes of. I'm sure that will all start coming to the forefront. But I do think that in terms of catering for those younger audiences, it's really important just to put it out there. And as you say, they'll see it. They may not like it, they may not share it, because actually, funnily enough, my previous background before coming into this industry was marketing. And I know all too well that the younger generations don't typically like and share in the same way that older demographics do. So don't be disheartened or discouraged thinking I promoted this event on my socials and nobody's even liked it. Because actually, I guarantee the ones that probably even did, maybe again from a different background, a different type of audience that are a little bit older, that would engage like that. And when I say a little bit older here, we're not talking boomers necessarily. I'm even probably talking my generation as well here. I'm in my 30s, and I think I'm getting into that world of kind of being seen as being a little bit old now. And it is the younger people, even younger than me, that are the ones that are going to be completely engaging it with it differently.
Yeah. Tom, that's been an amazing chat with you about everything. I think we've got an incredible amount of knowledge out of you today, so I do appreciate you joining us today. That was all I had to ask about, but if any of our listeners here are interested in kind of getting involved with GigRealm and getting some live music in their doors, how can they go about doing that?
Yeah, so we're a trusted partner and supplier of BII. So, please do, have a look at the portal in your account. You'll get access to our offers. We've got free trials as well as all sorts of other discounts on there. Or just, drop us a message through the website. I think that's probably the easiest ways to do it, to be honest with you. I won't do the hard sales pitch. But I do think, we are here as a tech provider first and foremost. So it is about just making it easy for you to be able to access fantastic talent that comes, by the way, directly from the music industry. So we work with local communities through to big national kind of record label types within the music sector to fuel our system with top talent, but affordable top talent that has to work for your budgets as hospitality. And so, drop us a note online or go through BII.
Amazing. Tom, thank you very much for joining us today. It's been a fantastic talk, and we will hopefully speak with you again soon.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the BII's Not Just a Pub podcast. We are delighted to bring you stories from inspirational people at the heart of our industry, sharing best practice and showcasing the incredible work they do. You can find out more at bii.org, but follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn to be the first to tune in to our newest episodes.